Aw, yeah. Let's get this party started up in here. Whoop, whoop. Hey, this is Mark. You're listening to this show probably on your mobile device, whether it's iOS or Android or even Windows Mobile. Who has one of those? But anyway, you're probably listening whether it's iTunes or Stitcher or some other wonderful mobile app that brings this amazingly awesome show to your ear holes. Yeah, but did you also know that you can find this show among several others in this category at the Tangent Bound Network? That's right, go visit tangentboundnetwork.com, check it out, where you can always get the latest episode of this and other shows quite like it. Although, admittedly, there is no show quite like this one.
Hello, everybody. This is the MLBeers podcast with your hosts, Andrew Sherman and Philip Corwin. Philip, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. A lot of things going on, out of baseball with school and work. But, we're here to talk about some great playoff baseball. One went down to the wire all the way to Game 7. And I know the other was kind of a, not as splashy per se about, I guess, the pace of play, I guess. But one team definitely splashed a lot in the home run department. And, of course, we'll get to that first. But first of all, we'll hit some news real quick. The Detroit Tigers have officially hired Ron Gardenhire as their manager, which for me, I haven't heard about the guy. Phil, you said off the show that he was the manager of the Twins for a while, correct?
I believe so. He was with the Twins in some sort of capacity. Let me see if I can bring it up. Go internet.
Oh, the internet.
Yeah, he was the Twins manager from 2002 to 2014.
Okay, so yeah, he was part of
Then he was with the Twins actually from 1991 until 2014.
Okay, so he was, he had multiple roles actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, his Wikipedia says he was a coach from 91 to 2001 and then manager from 2002 to 2014.
So he's had a little bit of he knows how to win, pretty much. I mean, during the 2000s, The Minnesota Twins were dominant as division winners. 91, his first year being a coach there, they win the World Series. So it's just he knows the pace of play, I guess, for what is needed as, to be a good manager. And, it's going to actually, I do have one question. Is it going to be harder for, Detroit gets a manager that they want, but is he going to be a tough customer when it comes to the regular season? Against Chicago, against the Central Division opponents. That's what I'm trying to say.
What do you mean?
Well, is he a manager? He's not like Brett Ausmus, right? Brett Ausmus.
No.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's going to be a formidable manager. And do you think he will outmanage some of the managers in the American League Central, which I know that's your forte?
Well, I bet Paul Molitor is a good Twins manager. Ned Yost does well. Obviously, Terry Francona does very well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he'll be better than the White Sox. But depending on, it all depends on who his players are, though. Because the Tigers are going into a rebuild here, which is kind of weird going with it's always weird to see an older veteran manager go to a rebuilding team.
Mm-hmm.
Because most veteran players want to go to a team that's going to win, and I feel like managers are most likely the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe, he just has better rapport with the younger players and is willing to do kind of what like Ned Yost did with the Royals with Alcides Escobar, Hosmer, Moose, and Perez by just leaving them in the lineup and letting them learn
Mm-hmm.
instead of doing what most managers would do is pull them in tight situations or in certain games.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they're just going to let Gardenhire just kind of run with the young players and hopefully with get hopefully the Tigers can get rid of some of their payroll and start reamping their farm system.
Yeah, they have a pretty costly payroll for being a team that was severely below 500 for the year. But that will do it for the news. But let's get on to the championship series. And of course, we got to talk about the one that was, dead in the water, it seemed like, the first pitch, and that was the National League Championship Series with the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Chicago Cubs, which the Dodgers won 4-1 in 5 games. And just a really quick roundup. In Game 1, the Dodgers won 5-2 over the Cubs in L.A. Then Dodgers beat the Cubs 4-1. In Game 3, 6-1 Dodgers. Game 4, it was a different story. The Cubs got their first win, hitting over 3 runs, but the Dodgers had 2 in that game. And then Game 5, pretty much the dagger in the heart, I guess nails in the coffin. I mean, I don't know what to say about this line right here, but 11-1 Dodgers in Chicago.
I was talking to my dad about this game, and he compared it a lot to the 1985 World Series Game 7.
Okay.
Just because of the stat line.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
Do you remember it?
I don't remember the score very much. I mean, I'm all hung up on Dick Derringer and, Game 6 on the blown call, but hey, that's just me. Hey. That's just me.
But Kansas City won 11-0.
Yeah.
It was just it was like my dad compared it. It was a game that was over before the 4th inning.
Yes, and this game was definitely over by the 4th inning.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, after the way the Cubs won in Game 4, it was hard fought. Their offense still wasn't that good, but they were able to quail the Dodgers offense. So you think turn around going into that game, maybe carry a little bit of that momentum, and it just didn't happen.
Yes, most definitely on that. And it just seemed like there was a different, I mean, of course, if you talk to anybody, it was definitely a different Cubs team this year than last year. They had
especially in the playoffs.
Yes.
There was just no offense in the playoffs this year.
Yes.
At least in the championship series.
Yeah, and of course that was kind of one of our key points was the offense had to come alive to really put up a fight for against the Dodgers and also their bullpen pitching. But real quick, I just want to we talked about talking about the offense. Chris Bryant, I'm going to go down the list from at bats in this series from the Chicago Cubs. Chris Bryant had a 200, 350 slash line, which of course makes it a 550 OPS. 4 strikeouts, 4 hits, and make one of those hits a home run. Wilson Contreras, 222, 389 slash line with a 611 OPS. Struck out 8 times, hit 4 times, make one of those as a home run. And then our boy Anthony Rizzo, which I love the Twitter timelines when it comes to sports. You always find interesting facts. So in Game 3, I believe, in the National League Division Series against the Washington Nationals. He got a hit, I believe, and he got to first base and he screamed, "Respect me."
Oh yeah, and that little bloop single.
Yeah. And from that point to, I believe it was Game 4 or Game 5, he was 0 for 20. Yes, 0 for 20. And it just shows right here, how can you respect a man when he has a slash line of .059, 158, and .059 with an OPS of 217. And of course, he had 8 strikeouts and 1 hit. And he walked. I mean, you got to give him a little bump on the on base percentage right there. But Anthony Rizzo was disrespected and humiliated against this Dodger rotation and, pitching staff, I should say. And that's just how it was. If you keep on going down the list, Almora Jr., 188, 438, 625 on base plus slugging. Addison Russell, 125. Javier Baez, 167. These guys, the only person, actually two people, the two people that hit 300 and above were the pitchers. Jake Arrieta hit straight up 500.
Doesn't count.
Doesn't count, though. John Lester hit 500. Doesn't count. Jose Quintana doesn't count. He hit over 500. Actually, Alex Avila, the only guy that hit 1,000 because he only had one at bat, 1,000. But that just shows that the pitchers, even though it's, by batting average and all that stuff, and we shouldn't, really rely on that a lot, but it does correlate that these guys didn't get a lot of hits. Kyle Schwarber, only 2 hits out of 12 at bats, 1 home run, 2 strikeouts, which is very, very minimal. And I mean, Javier Baez, he had 6.
Struck out 3. Yeah, I was gonna say he struck out 3 times in the 11-1 Game 5.
Yeah, because everybody was trying to hit home runs. You can't try. That was the thing.
Same thing. Zobrist, same thing. Struck out twice that game, and he's usually not a huge strikeout guy.
Yeah, it just showed in that in this situation. It just showed that the Cubs were they were a meddling team this year, and I mean, hell, they didn't even have the division lead until late July into August, and they had a great second half. Don't get me wrong, but comparing it to last year, definitely was not the prettiest of them all. And I can't wait until the end of the season where they get everybody's numbers and put it into OOTP, and I would love to do the before and after. And I mean, hell, I can do a before and after with the Kansas City Royals. The 15 winner, compare them to the 16, missed the playoffs by, just a few games. But the comparison between the Royals missing the playoffs, 15 and 16, to the Cubs 16 and 17 team, I mean, this is just brutal from what I'm seeing, from this Cubs team. And yes, I do have to say that I am a Cardinals fan, but man, this is, I mean,
that was tough to watch.
It was tough to watch. I mean,
and it wasn't even a great, when you go into these kind of, I don't know, when you want a good playoff series, this was none of that.
Yes, and this is when I was saying,
if you're a Dodgers,
go ahead.
If you're a Dodgers fan, yeah, it's a great fucking series. You watched your team just do it exactly what they needed to do to go in with extra rest going into the World Series against going into the World Series.
Yeah, not only that, but it was a dismantling of the defending champions. Literally a dismantling of the defending champions. This was just it was a really, 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 I just have to say, a really poor, series from the Cubs. But like I said, they didn't do anything to improve themselves. Like we said, that was one of our key factors. If Bryant and Rizzo, come out there and start swinging and actually getting hits instead of strikeouts, this would probably be a different story. It would have gone 7 games, and that's what I had. It would have probably gone to 7 games, and it would have been maybe Dodgers because they had the home field advantage. But I expected this.
I'm pretty sure I said the series would go 6.
Yeah, and this is just, ugh.
Yeah, it was just bad. It was just overall the Chicago Cubs did not play good baseball, and the Dodgers had a excellent game plan in attacking all of their hitters.
Yes,
and the Dodgers went in there without their star shortstop, Kyle Seager.
Corey Seager.
It's Corey Seager. And their backup shortstop, Culberson, for the series hit 455.
Yeah.
He's not hitting home runs like Seager, but it's the fact that he almost hit 500.
Yeah. And another guy that really surprised me, definitely in Game 5, a guy that's usually on the bench, Kike Hernandez, or Enrique Hernandez is his official name. The guy goes off hitting 3 home runs, one of them being a grand slam. And this was just something that was just pitiful. Again, this guy, he does have a chance to play on a major league team. He's that good enough. That's why he's a bench player. But that guy, if they were going, their best 9 on that field for the Dodgers, he would be on the bench. He would probably never be thought of unless they need a pinch runner or a pinch hitter for the pitcher. But Kike Hernandez had no way being on that field, but he was because of injury, because that's how they set up the lineup. But he hits 3 freaking home runs in a game. And if you have a bench player that's able to do that, it's hard to see, the Dodgers, go into this World Series and somehow lose momentum from that Game 5. Yeah, they have 4 days of rest before Game 1 of the World Series or whatever. But what I'm seeing is that if you have your bench players doing well and your starting players doing well, this team is going to be unstoppable.
But yeah, looking at the LA Dodgers, though, why Kike Hernandez is starting, it's because Granderson's not playing well. Andre Ethier is hitting 250 for the playoffs. He has 2 hits. And then you got Andrew Toles and Dickerson and Gutierrez. Those 3 guys aren't going to appear in a game unless it's for a pinch running. Saying, Jock Peterson all year was not himself.
Yep.
So you're kind of stuck with Hernandez out and left and Chris Taylor in center. Because you don't have a lot of other valuable options right now. And in the playoffs, you're going to go with the hot hand. Chris Taylor's hitting 316. Hernandez is hitting 444. So I wouldn't be surprised in Game 1 of the World Series that Hernandez is back in there in the starting lineup.
I probably wouldn't be surprised either, especially his Game 5 performance.
Yeah, it warrants at least starting Game 1, because Jock Peterson's hitting 200 for the playoffs right now. And like I said, Ethier's hitting 250. Granderson has no hits, and Gutierrez, Dickerson, and Toles don't have any at-bats. So, just looking at it that way, I believe that Hernandez will be in the starting lineup.
And, I definitely agree with you. But switching gears real quick, I know we've been talking a lot about batting, but it's also kind of the same thing going on with the pitching. And, comparing the Los Angeles Dodgers pitching to the Chicago Cubs pitching, kind of the same deal. Just going down the list for the Dodgers, Clayton Kershaw, 2 games, he had an ERA of 2.45. Yu Darvish in his 1 game had a 1.42. Rich Hill in his 1 game, 1.80. And Alex Wood, this is where they got the loss. In Game 4, Alex Wood comes in. He has a 5.79 ERA. But what happened in that game? He went 4 2/3 of an inning, gave up 4 hits, 3 earned runs, and 3 of those were home runs. But he did strike out 7, which, for him, just getting any type of postseason looks is good for him. He's a young guy. He's a fireballer. Anyway, Rich Hill, looking at his line, he went 5 innings, gave up 3 hits, 1 earned run, which was a home run. He only had 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. Yu Darvish, 6 1/3 innings, gave up 6 hits, 1 home run, which was the earned run, 1 walk, and 7 strikeouts. But for Clayton Kershaw, I'm going to go game by game here. In the first game, he went 5 innings, gave up 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts, and 1 run was a home run. And then in Game 5, I wanted to say 4, but I already talked about Alex Wood being in Game 4. Anyway, Kershaw, 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned run, which was a home run, and 5 strikeouts. This is the difference maker. If you look at Clayton Kershaw versus Quintana in Game 5, Quintana went 5 innings. Quintana in Game 5 went 2 innings. In Game 1, he went 5 innings. In Game 2, when it was, I believe it was John Lester, 4 2/3 innings. In Game 3, Hendricks, 5 innings. These guys put up enough innings to be good. Jake Arrieta went 6 2/3 innings and did real well, but then you look at the lines and it's not good. And for Quintana, gave up 2 hits, 2 earned runs, only 4 strikeouts. Then in Game 2, Lester, 3 hits, 1 earned run, gave up 5 walks and 2 strikeouts in Game 2. In Game 3, Hendricks gave up 6 hits, 3 earned runs, but 4 runs that he got, 3 of them earned. 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, and 2 home runs. Jake Arrieta, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 5 walks, 9 strikeouts, make 1 of those runs a home run. And then Quintana gave up 6 hits, 6 earned runs, 1 walk, 1 strikeout, and 1 home run. That's just the starting pitching. And if you compared those to I've already said about the Dodgers, but comparing that, it doesn't look that great. We've talked about this not only for the Cubs, but for every team. If you can get your starting pitcher to go 6, 7 innings, you're good. You're golden, pretty much. If he, gives up 2 runs out of that 6, you're golden. That's one, that's 1/3 of your outing.
And speaking of getting the starting pitching until a full 6, look what the Dodgers man will do all postseason between Maeda, Morrow, and Jansen. 21 innings, and they only allowed a 1.08 ERA, and that belongs to Brandon Morrow. Maeda and Jansen have not let up an earned run.
And that's just incredible,
Yeah.
This, I have both of the screens up to show this, but if you look at the bullpen for the numbers, and I'm gonna go Dodgers Cubs on this. Tony Singrini, 0 ERA. Wade Davis, 4.50. Josh Fields for the Dodgers, 0 ERA. Brian Dunsing, 2.25. Kenley Jansen, 0 ERA. Carl Edwards Jr., 0. Kenta Maeda, 0. John Lackey, 9.82. Brandon Morrow, 0. Mike Montgomery, 13.5. Ross Stripling, 0. Hector Rendon, 6. And Tony Watson, 0 ERA. Pedro Strop, 0 ERA. What was the difference between those two teams? The Dodgers, 0 ERA all around for their bullpen. I do not even see a blemish on their lines. 1 walk. Looking at it, 1 walk, 3 hits. Actually, 4 hits for the bullpen. If you look at the Cubs, Mike Montgomery gave up 10 hits in the 3 1/3 that he was a part of. 5 earned runs, 2 home runs, 2 walks. John Lackey, 4 runs, 1 home run, 2 walks. Brian Dunsing, 3 walks. Wade Davis, 3 walks, so on and so forth. There was just a different team out there for the Dodgers. They were ready to go. They had this impeccable, pitching staff, and it actually showed. And it's weird that one of the games that Kenley Jansen was in, he actually got a save, which I was pretty surprised about. But there's blemishes, deep tissue blemishes on one side, and, perfect, no blemishes at all, no damage at all on the other side. And that's with the Dodgers. And it just shows that there was really a difference between these two clubs.
Yeah. And, I don't know how much more we can harp on it either. It's just the Dodgers have clearly been the dominant team all year.
Mm-hmm.
And they just carried that into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. And, it's great, for LA finally getting into the World Series.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, it's been 30 years since the Dodgers been in the World Series?
It's been 29 years.
29 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they're going in there with arguably the best team in baseball.
Mm-hmm. Hands down, arguably.
Especially right now in the postseason. They're the best team in the postseason right now.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't struggled offensively, and they haven't struggled defensively either.
Mm-hmm.
They swept the Diamondbacks. They almost sweep the Cubs.
Yeah. Man.
It kind of, I'm a Royals fan. So look what the Royals did in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
When swept their way into the World Series.
Being the
wild card team.
Yeah, and just being dominant, though.
Yeah, and that's, when you get to the playoffs, that's what you have to be. Look at the other series. Look what happened in the Yankees and Astros series. Neither team won on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to series before that, the Yankees and the Indians. There was a lot of bad baseball played.
Yes.
So, and then compare that to what the Dodgers are doing, and they're playing nearly flawless baseball,
mm-hmm.
which is almost impossible to do.
Yes. And especially being, being all the way down, playing a full season and then still being flawless is just immaculate.
Yeah, like they had that one little stretch, was it in August and September, where they lost like 11 or something in a row.
Yeah. They had that, that spell, that dry spell,
which
late August, early September.
Yeah. And everyone was real worried, like, hey, are they going to carry that kind of attitude or playing into the postseason? And after that 11-game losing streak, they've just been clearly dominant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just like, I'm just surprised. And again, like you said, 2014 team of the Royals was crazy, but you can't.
Well, you can't compare them to that because the Royals were the first team to ever do that.
Yeah. Yes, and it's still,
it's like that.
Yeah. It's still immaculate.
Because Dodgers just aren't taking their foot off the gas pedal.
Yeah. And, I think that's how you got to do it. You can't let your let your foot slip off the gas pedal, and it's definitely when it comes to playoff baseball. And if they don't,
in that game 5 when they were up 9-0, they kept going up there and taking good at bats.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't trying to rush through the game. They were trying to add on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you got to do. It doesn't matter what the score is in the playoffs. You add on until the game is over.
Mm-hmm. Until the final out, yeah.
In the regular season, if the Dodgers were up 9-0 by the 4th or 5th inning, they would pull most of their starters.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that in the postseason.
Yeah.
Obviously. But you leave your starters in, and your starters are still going up there and getting good at bats.
Mm-hmm.
Staying focused and not letting the score dictate how you play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All hands on deck. And you can't slip up. Like you've been saying, you got to be there from first pitch to final out. You can't, you can't have, especially, like you said, game 5 where they were already up 9-0, they were still taking good at bats. And fouling off left and right, getting into deep counts.
Yep. And because you want to be able to maintain that approach going into the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to take a couple at bats off and then try to refocus that later.
Mm-hmm.
You want to keep that same kind of focus every at bat.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now let's move on to the American League Championship Series, where it was against the Houston Astros and the New York Yankees. And, to be honest with you, it was kind of boring in a sense. I know we were talking about it before we started doing the show, and how, a lot of things made it boring. Specifically, no team actually tried to win on the road.
Yeah. And, the Astros go into it 2 games up on the road. Because they won first 2 games at home, 2-1. And if they would have taken 1 on the road, this game would have ended in game 6.
Mm-hmm. Not even only that, but it could have possibly ended game 5, maybe game 4. A sweep would have happened possibly. But it was just so boring because the home team won, and it was
every time.
Yeah, and congratulations, you won at home.
Yeah, no, they did what they needed to do,
Mm-hmm.
but each team though offensively really struggled this series.
Yeah, and that's
because the
that's
Astros
true.
had Altuve and Correa kind of come to life. Altuve's been doing it all postseason, but we talked about how Correa needed to have a good series going into the World Series, and he did.
Mm-hmm.
But on the Yankees standpoint, really no one really did too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, looking at going into the postseason, all eyes are on Aaron Judge, and for the whole postseason, he only hit 188, 48 at bats, 4 home runs, 11 RBIs. His OPS is nice at 816, so he wasn't striking out as much, but he seemed to strike out quite a bit in key situations.
Yeah, and actually in the in the league championship series, he had 11 strikeouts, 4 walks, and 6 hits, making three of those hits home runs. And it was just, 250 batting average. 20, you get 6 hits out of 24 tries. You did walk 4 times. But still, this is kind of the thing that we brought up. That was the key factor. Yes, Aaron Judge did actually, come to life a little bit, but not necessarily the way that we wanted it. Not necessarily, how, I'm guessing everybody in New York wanted it to be, besides in the games in New York. But just having the time, I guess what I'm trying to say is that he's still striking out a lot. And especially in key situations where right now he could have been the top dog. If he actually tried one bit to become this top dog, top billing right here, he would have. I mean, he would be a Yankee hero and legend all in his first season of baseball. His first season,
And
but that
on
didn't
the flip
happen.
side, and on the flip side of that, though, it's his full first year in the league, rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
The Astros pitching staff exposed every hole in his swing that he has.
Mm-hmm.
So Judge can take it as a learning moment. And we saw what he did during the regular season. But
Yeah.
if he was exposed as much as he was during the playoffs, as any competitor, you're going to go in and try to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a very good possibility next year he's even better.
There is always that possibility, and I
Yes.
can't disagree with you. And most likely it might be a sophomore slump. I mean, Corey Seager kind of had that this year with the Los Angeles Dodgers.
But when you look at guys like that are that young, or I guess not young, but their rookie year, this is a good learning experience for them.
Mm-hmm.
Especially a rookie getting postseason experience right off the bat.
Yeah.
And this Yankees club is pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
And something we're not, you and I aren't really used to.
Yeah, we're used to the high-priced veterans.
Yeah, and not really much of a farm system.
Mm-hmm.
And we all forget that they still have Mason Williams down there.
Mm-hmm.
So between Judge, Gregorius, Sanchez, and Bird, they have a pretty solid core.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can get good starting pitching and maintain, they're going to be a good team.
Yeah, I mean,
and it doesn't mean I'm going to like them.
Yeah, that's a whole nother ball game that I had to, try to talk about this past weekend with coworkers about favorite Yankees players, and I'm like, I don't really like the Yankees at all. I mean, there's some people that are, talent-wise good and all that stuff, but I was just like, not a fan of Aaron Judge yet. I know he's pretty likable, but 200 plus strikeouts with 50 whatever home runs. That's not my thing. But I do have to give him credit, he did
walk away with a 284 average though.
Yeah.
And so he's still, it's not like he hit 52 home runs and barely hit 215.
Yeah. I got to give him credit for that. And I got to give him credit also for many of his miraculous defensive plays during the LCS against, the Astros, where he robbed, I feel like he robbed 3 home runs, I believe. But of course,
especially that short wall out in right field though in Houston,
mm-hmm.
and his height.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not taking away from what he does, but he has a little bit. I would think he has a little bit better of an opportunity
mm-hmm.
than most right fielders out there.
Mm-hmm. And I also feel, that's kind of like, it's kind of like Yao Ming dunking, in basketball. It's just, or Shaq, where it's just like really just up on their tippy toes and dunk. That's how I kind of feel with Aaron Judge getting those getting the home runs. Robbing the home runs was just kind of like, did try to jump, but I have to say one thing that, we'll get to talking about the Astros in a couple of minutes, but the one thing that Aaron Judge couldn't do is rob a home run from his MVP contender, his other MVP contender, Jose Altuve. And it was kind of like, Jose Altuve making his point that I am the MVP, not you, Aaron Judge. That's just me, though. Yeah. But let's enough.
We'll talk about that towards the end of the. We'll talk about more about that at the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
But just to make a basic argument, Altuve hit 346
mm-hmm.
compared to a 284.
Mm-hmm.
Altuve's OPS is lower,
mm-hmm.
but Altuve has the career stat of hitting 316.
Mm-hmm.
the dude is just a boss.
Yeah, he is. He is just something else. But like I said before, yeah, go ahead, real quick.
Okay. Well, I'll wait till we get to the Astros.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, getting back to the Yankees, we can't talk about just Aaron Judge for the time being. You also have to look at the other guys that were playing too, just on the position player side. Greg Bird, he went 250. Didi Gregorius, even though he had some home runs in the division series, he had none in the league championship series. I want to say championship league series for some odd reason. Anyway, Starlin Castro, he went 208. Gary Sanchez, 192. Todd Frazier, 182, and so on and so forth. Guys that, really, hell, that was most of their guys that were playing every day, every at bat. Aaron Hicks had an 083. Brett Gardner had a 148. And some of these guys just didn't do as well over 250. You can try to make the case for Chase Headley, which he DH'd, I believe, all but 1 or 2 games in the league championship series, and he had hit a 389, which is incredible, which is great. He had an OPS of 833, but also comparing it to Greg Bird, Didi Gregorius, not even Starlin Castro, but Aaron Judge. Some of these guys had good on base percentages, good slugging percentages. Greg Bird had a 964 OPS. Aaron Judge, even though he hit 250, he had a 1.065 OPS. But, then it just dwindles down a lot. Chase Headley had an 833, but then it just goes down and goes down. But, enough of the, position players. Let's talk about the pitching. I know that's your focus. And it seems like when it comes to the starters, starters almost seem flawless besides Luis Severino. CC Sabathia, had a 9.96 ERA in 2 games. But he gave up 8 hits, 7 walks. He did strike out 5 though, but that was kind of a lot for what happened. Yeah, go ahead.
And then, same thing with Tanaka. 13 innings, 0.138 ERA. Sonny Gray in his 1 start, 180. Severino did get beat up, but look what happened to Chapman. Chapman 1 1/3, 675.
Mm-hmm.
Betances in his 1 inning, 9.
Mm-hmm.
Chad Green was their only shut-down reliever in 6 1/3. He didn't even pitch in Game 7 because he wasn't available because the night before he went, I think, 2 or 3 innings.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you throw out Tybee, I hate his name.
It's Canely, but I like to say Conley because it's the spelling. That's where it kind of gets But I say Conley, everybody else says Canely. Unless I hear it from his mouth, I'm still going to call him Conley. But anyway, keep on going.
You throw Canely in there, and in his 11 1/3, he had a 2.38 ERA.
Mm-hmm.
And in Game 7, he's the guy responsible for 3 runs. That 3-run 5th inning when they pulled CC Sabathia.
You were right.
Because Sabathia got in a little bit of trouble, and they pulled him, and Canely didn't shut it down. It's kind of the story for each team that lost. When they lost on the road is because more or less their bullpen had let them down. Like that first game in New York when the Astros were up 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
It was Charlie Morton who somehow was a shutdown starter in Game 7.
Yeah, somehow.
Somehow, yeah, because he got blown up. He did 3 2/3, 7 earned runs.
Mm-hmm.
Game 2.
Game 3. Game 3.
Game 3. Sorry, Game 3.
It's all good. I'm looking at it all right now.
But Game 3 is when McCullers Jr. went 6 innings and only allowed 1 earned. Then Deviniski in a 3rd inning let up 1. Musgrove let up 2. Ken Giles let up 2.
Mm-hmm.
These guys' the team's bullpen just wasn't producing like they had all season.
Mm-hmm.
Keuchel had a bad game in New York. And then you turn around and Game 2 and Game 6 were nearly identical for Verlander.
Mm-hmm.
And then you turn around and have Game 7 and Charlie Morton and Lance McCullers can apparently pitch a whole game and only allow 3 hits to the Yankees with 11 strikeouts.
Yeah, and, you talk about with Yankees bullpen not doing so well, and then you go right into how Houston has a shaky bullpen too. I mean, if you just look at those numbers, for the league championship series, you have Davinsky going. He has a 13.5 ERA. Ken Giles 9. I think it's William Harris has a 6.75. Musgrove a pure 27, and Brad Peacock with a 7.71. But you also have to look what have they gave up. Ken Giles, he gave up 3 earned runs. Musgrove with 2, Peacock with 2, and they didn't hardly walk him. Don't get me wrong. I believe it's 7 walks from Giles, Gregerson, Harris, and Lariano and McHugh. But also they struck out a lot. Struck those guys out. Giles had 5, McHugh had 3, Peacock had 4. But it just, for them, it just wasn't enough. They gave up, too much at certain times. Like Giles had 5 hits, Harris had 2, Musgrove had 2, and Peacock had 2. And that's where it kind of, it got shaky because those hits produced runs. And that's the reason why it's, shaky.
Yeah, and just a little bit of foreshadowing. The Dodgers bullpen has been shut down all postseason.
I believe there was only 1 hit in that for the bullpen, and actually 1 hit or 1 run. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, it just showed.
And what the Astros were able to do in Game 7, we talked a little bit about it before we hit the record button. What they were able to do in Game 7 is just use Morton and McCullers.
Mm-hmm.
Morton is going to be able to go on regular days rest, and so is McCullers.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have to use an extra guy, and maybe the extra day of rest will help settle that bullpen down like they were all year.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are not going to be able to afford to make any mistakes against the Dodgers because the Dodgers bullpen is better.
Yeah, and significantly better. I mean, I know we talked about it, before, before we talked about the ALCS and before we went on that, the Dodgers are going to be, they're going to be tough to beat, but, it's like, look at the bullpen. It's not impossible. I mean, the Cubs had 1 game, they won 1 game, but, also you kind of have to, it's going to be a good series. I mean, the good World Series, but we're not talking about that at the moment. We will get to that later. But 2 things before we get to the position players for the Houston Astros, and we got to give 2 shout-outs right here to Justin Verlander and Lance McCullers Jr. I know that you kind of brought up them, a little bit ago, but if you just look at the stat line, it is just
Verlander
it's
was
just
nuts.
oozing. It's just oozing with greatness.
In Verlander's 16 innings, only 2 hits, 2 walks, and 21 strikeouts.
Yeah.
Which against a high strikeout team like the Yankees, he was expected to have a good strikeout number.
Mm-hmm.
but he went complete game in a 2-1 game in game 2.
Mm-hmm.
Just shut it down. And then if you go into game 6, same thing. What did he go? 7 innings?
7 innings, gave up 7 innings, 5 hits, no runs, 1 walk, and 8 strikeouts. So, I mean, whoo!
And he gave up 1 run in game 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he gave up in his game 2 appearance. He went 9 innings, gave up 5 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, but again, 13 strikeouts. That's I hate to,
This is the Verlander we used to see 6-7 years ago.
Not only that, but the numbers that he's pulling off, the strikeout numbers. Any Cardinals fans listening, but that's Bob Gibson numbers right there. I mean, Bob Gibson has the highest, this is, World Series record, but Bob Gibson has the highest strikeouts in a single game in a World Series at 18. But this, for Verlander, he went 13 in one game and let me get the right one, and 8 in the next. So, I mean, he's getting pretty high up there. And there could be that opportunity, for, possibly not only him, but also Dallas Keuchel to get high strikeout numbers. I mean, there is that possibility.
That game 2 was so important.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he doesn't go a full 9, what he in, like 125, 127 pitches that night?
I believe so. Let me check real quick. If he
doesn't go that full.
124 pitches, 93 of those were strikes.
And see, that's the difference. He just attacked. And these Yankees hitters weren't ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
He was not serving the ball up, but he wasn't throwing balls. He wasn't trying to get swings and misses with balls in the dirt or low and away in the corner, high and tight.
Mm-hmm.
He just had A+ 80 grade stuff that night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like I said, this is the Verlander we used to see 6-8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because what was it? When he turned 31 years old, his velocity dropped. And we've had the conversations that we thought he was done.
Yeah. Not going to lie about that.
No. 3 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was 2014 when the Royals were making their runs, and we were just beating up Verlander.
Mm-hmm.
I remember especially, I think Salve Perez was just, every time he played against Verlander, was taking him deep. And I just thought this was over for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because didn't he have surgery? I believe I know that he was injured one year.
Yeah.
And this was specifically, this is 2014. 2 years before, they were playing for a World Series title. So
yeah. And at this point, the way he's been able to not even resurrect, he had already had a good career.
Mm-hmm.
But the way he was able to adjust and bring his velocity back up somehow, because he's still hitting 97, 98.
Mm-hmm. He's probably still has, of course he still has gas in his tank, but also maybe the resurrection of him being on a team that was in playoff contention compared to meddling, possibly first pick of the draft for next year.
Look what he did for the Astros in the month of September. Had like a 1.07 ERA.
Mm-hmm.
The dude was lights out and ready for the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And he's shown it in every game he's pitched this postseason.
Yeah, and, to the next guy, Lance McCullers, he only went 10 innings. He had a .9 ERA. His opponent batting average was a .097 batting average. He struck out 9. He walked 3. He gave up 3 hits and 1 earned run, which was a home run. You can't blame him on that. And he was credited for a save too. But, that's kind of the other guy, Justin Verlander, he came in through a trade. Lance McCullers Jr. came through the system. And it was, I've listened to a bunch of other podcasts throughout the week once they won, and it was just like, this was a special moment because Lance McCullers, guy went through the Houston system, got pitched for the last out, and George Springer was the guy that caught the ball for the last out, and it was at home, so it was even better. And I think this is kind of the one thing that I think all of Houston wanted to see was to win a pennant at home. I mean, they won the pennant in 2005, but that was all the way in St. Louis. And I'm, again, listening to other podcasts, they kind of said that kind of the best, I guess, the most memorized part of that series was not even Houston winning the pennant. It was Albert Pujols hitting a three-run home run at Minute Maid Park in 2005 in Game 5. So, I mean, that's a whole other thing. But, we got to also talk about the hitting, too. And, we talked about how Chris Correa, my bad on that. That's actually kind of a touchy subject to talk about Chris Correa with Carlos Correa and the Houston Astros. But Carlos Correa, we said last episode that he needed to come out and hit, and he did. He had a 333, 357, and 556 slash line with a 913 OPS. He had 9 hits, 4 runs. Three of those 9 hits were doubles. He did hit a home run, but he did strike out 5 times. But then again, this is kind of the difference between Aaron Judge and Carlos Correa. If you hit 333 but have a low strikeout number, get 9 hits, that's all good. But I mean, you got to calm down on the strikes.
Well, yeah, but this has been a record year in strikeouts and home runs.
Yeah, free swinging, right?
Yeah. If you're unless you're Altuve.
I mean,
but
Altuve is just a different beast.
Exactly. And so, we talked about it last time that Correa needed to have a good series, and he did.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, go ahead.
It has to help Altuve knowing that the guy behind him is able to be able to pick him up.
Yeah, most definitely.
Altuve doesn't have to be the man hitting in the 3-hole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I totally agree. And I mean, Altuve, you can't give Carlos Correa all the credit. I mean, if you look at Altuve, he had a 320 batting average, 414 on base percentage, and a 560 slugging, which that would equal to a 974 OPS. He also had 8 hits, and he scored 5 times. He had 2 home runs. He walked 4 times, and he struck out 5 times. And he also stole a base. So that's even better. I mean, that's kind of like the first stolen base I've seen all this postseason.
Yeah. But no, the home, the overall kind of, for me, the overall feeling for this ALCS is that good dominant starting pitching and mediocre offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, and especially when the one team was home, it was definitely the team that was at home definitely had the advantage clearly, but it was just so bad that we can just go through the lines real quick. Game 1, 2-1 Astros. Game 2, 2-1 Astros. Game 3, 8-1 Yankees. Game 4, 6-4 Yankees. Game 5, 5-0 Yankees. Game 6, 7-1 Astros. And Game 7, 4-0 Astros. And besides Game 1 and Game 2, definitely those high-scoring games, specifically the 8-1 win for the Yankees in Game 3 and the Game 6 Astros win with the 7-1 victory, just kind of seemed like there was a lot of home, a home feel to it. And definitely you don't have to have you definitely don't have to really have that.
No. And when people, I don't know, I guess the series was good.
It went to a full 7. I had it going to
Yeah.
6, which I knew that the Yankees were going to win some of the games. I think what we're kind of upset about is that the lack of away team offense, and that's going to be a difference maker when the going into this World Series. And of course, we'll talk about that in a moment. But I just want to say a couple things first about the other position players for the Houston Astros real quick. We talked about Correa, we talked about Altuve, guys that were hitting good, but you also have to look at the other guys also, like Yuri Gurriel, Brian McCann, Alex Bregman, Marwin Gonzalez. I somehow had
who has not shown up yet.
Yeah, our boy that hasn't shown up yet. George Springer, you could talk about Evan Gattis and Carlos Beltran, but, Josh Reddick is another guy, too.
Oh, my gosh. He's hitting just not well.
Those guys that I named.
Reddick is only hitting 171.
Yeah. And the guys that I named right there, from Gurriel to Reddick, first of all, Gurriel had a 250 batting average. The third he was fourth. The third person was Altuve with a 320. I can't say enough about, I can't say a lot about I want to say Curtis Maben, but it's Cameron Maben. He only had 3 at bats. He went 333. I can't give him much. But it just shows that Altuve to Gurriel has that set .07 point differential, and then it just gets worse from there with McCann with a 188, Bregman 167, Marwin Gonzalez 136, George Springer 115. This is kind of the thing. Somehow Carlos Correa gets all the way, hitting what he's supposed to hit, and then these other guys, again, they're not hitting. And don't get me wrong, I don't know about you, they've made great defensive plays. I remember Alex Bregman doing that nice no-hop throw at home to keep the game, as a shutout in Game 7. George Springer.
Reddick had a nice
Reddick had a nice catch. George Springer had some nice catches, and one that I almost wanted to throw stuff at the TV because of the recklessness of the catch. The almost collision at the wall with Marwin Gonzalez. That one kind of got me mad, and I was hoping that A.J. Hinch, the manager of the Houston Astros, would get after him when he got into the dugout, because that could have been 2 careless things in one situation. 2 birds in one stone kind of ordeal. First of all, the ball, if he missed the ball could have hit the wall and there would have been nobody there, because if he missed that ball, more than likely he would have hit Marwin Gonzalez. And that's where it was reckless play. And I hate that. And it's, again, George Springer called it off. You can definitely see it in the replays, but definitely Marwin Gonzalez didn't hear him or something. I know it can get pretty loud in pretty much in an arena, but still, that was a scary moment, and that could have been the difference between them getting into the World Series or being at home. But, again, defensive plays have been great. It has just been the offense that has been terrible.
Yeah, and there's not really anywhere else to really go or say about it. We'll talk about it more when we preview the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
But the Astro offense is going to have to do something different.
Yeah, and that's all I can really say, because if they're going to face this Dodger team, they have to do a lot. But of course, we will talk about that in a moment, folks. We're going to head into the break, then we're going to be talking about beer, and then a little bit of expansion. And then we will talk about the World Series. So we'll be right back, folks, for the MLBeers podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to the MLBeers podcast. And, of course, we're going to be talking about the second part of our name, the beer portion of the podcast. So, Phil, I got to ask, what are you drinking today?
Today, I'm drinking Stone's Vengeful Spirit IPA. On the can, it says it's made with juicy pineapple and mandarin oranges.
Interesting. Not necessarily.
And
it's an interesting combination.
And for all of you that have drank Stone Brewing Company, you know they type up a monologue and taste it on each can, or I guess bottle.
Yeah, depending on what size you get. But yes.
Yeah. I can read it for you.
Go right on ahead.
It says, we've often been inspired to brew beers on a theme. In 2007, it was black IPAs. 2008 saw Belgium-influenced IPAs. And more than once, it's been triple IPAs. It's fun to dive deep, and you've ridden those waves right along with us. But like you, we also crave new breaks to surf. Right now, it's tropically inspired IPAs, as represented both by this flavored ale, Stone Tangerine Express IPA, and others we've got waiting in the wings. With Stone Vengeful Spirit IPA, we employ a bit of tropical mythology to pay homage to our ever-present gargoyle. Since '96, he's had our backs and yours by representing an aggressive intolerance for commoditized beer. Ooh, wasn't ready for that word. He has constantly inspired us to forge ahead with resolve, even when the ominous present forces of forceful evil. Ooh, that's a weird sentence. Vengeful spirits can be awesome when they're on your side.
So is this beer kind of like a October release? It sounds like, or just
I don't know. It's very tropical.
Very tropical.
The pineapple and citrus is very present. Like, I'm trying to think of another pineapple. The only other pineapple IPA that jumps off to me is Ballast Point's Pineapple Sculpin.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
Think of that, but add some that tart mandarin orange citrus to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I get from it.
Mm-hmm. It sounds delicious. It sounds really delicious.
No, I enjoy it quite a bit. But I got this whole runny nose thing going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's because I was weed eating my yard, and I wasn't wearing safety glasses.
Oh.
And a weed came back and hit me in my right eye.
Ugh.
And for some reason, my nose won't stop running, and my eye won't stop watering.
That is
fun. It's a fun experience.
It sounds like a horrible experience.
Yeah, it's not fun. I don't enjoy it at all. It's very awkward.
Well, anyway, I mean, you could have said something how it the IPA makes you tear up and makes you your nose run, but hey, whatever floats your boat, right?
Yeah. So what are you drinking today?
So my beer is Imperial Pumpkin Smash by Crown Valley Brewing Company out in St. Genevieve, Missouri. and it's a stout brewed with pumpkin and spices. And Stone always has a monologue for theirs. This doesn't have a monologue, but it has a description of what the beer is. It says, "Our Imperial Pumpkin Stout is deliciously roasted with dark chocolate and toffee notes, with a hint of smoke and a little spice from the hops that give it a pine note. The pumpkin adds body and character for a great beer. For best taste, serve warm, 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has an IBU, or the International Bitter Unit, of 48, and the alcohol by volume level is 10.6%. And yeah, it's up there. I've had other beverages today, but I have to say, you can definitely get the smoke, and you can definitely, it has a little kind of bite to it. The chocolate, it definitely, you could taste the roasted and smokiness to it. The chocolate and toffee, not so much. The pumpkin probably this probably would have came out more if I served it the way it's supposed to be served. But since I kept this in my fridge at a nice, 36 to 40 degrees, it is I think it's very hidden with the pumpkin. But overall, it's a good beer. I'm not gonna lie about that. It's a very good beer, and I'm not disappointed with it.
I was like, you're getting your fill of pumpkin beers.
Yes, actually, that's the third or fourth pumpkin beer for the show, but it's October. I had to do it.
I guess I have not yet had a pumpkin beer this year.
Well, all I can say is get your Schlafly's. See, the beer's already gotten to me. Get your Schlafly's pumpkin ale, because I believe the past week it won silver medal at the Great American Beer Festival. So
it did.
So yeah, it's a very enjoyable beer. This Imperial Pumpkin Smash. Definitely, I don't know what the distribution range is for this, since it's a smaller company than Boulevard or Schlafly's. Hell, I didn't even know they had a brewing company in St. Genevieve, Missouri, which is the Boot Hill, folks. And if you have not heard about the Boot Hill, it's pretty far out there.
Yeah.
Is that keeping it mild? I feel like I mean.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to keep it mild here for the folks.
How many other beers you've had today?
I've had one beer and a couple of shots of Jack Daniels, but that was like 6 o'clock.
Why are you doing shots of Jack Daniels at 6 o'clock?
Because I don't have to do anything else. What
I'm not judging you at all. That sounds fantastic.
I didn't have to go, do other things, around town. So I can, I'm just here on a Thursday night, enjoying everything. So anyway.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, go ahead.
Apparently I had to stay sober because I had parent-teacher conferences.
Ooh. You didn't want to go when you were a child, and you definitely don't want to go as a parent.
No, but luckily, each teacher, it was quick, 5-10 minutes, and we were in and out.
And you're keeping making sure your children's studying properly and getting good grades.
Yeah, apparently, I do something right. Even though they wholeheartedly disagree.
Whatever floats their boats, right?
Right.
So anyway, that is it for the beer portion of the MLBeers podcast. And before we talk about the World Series, we got to talk about this MLB expansion that has been in the talks as of late. How it all started. Rob Manfred this past week was in Seattle talking about, having, I believe it was like meetings up in Seattle, and Portland came up again, which I did not know that Portland was up to be I didn't know Portland was a bidding city to get the Montreal Expos, which are now the Washington Nationals.
They were one of the top cities. They were one of the top cities behind DC.
Which I did not know about, and it's kind of a good thing that they're up there. And, well, again, like I said, Rob Manfred has talked about how the possible expansion and everything else. Didn't have any details about it, like what is he going to do. There's just the possibility of an expansion in the future. Well, Baseball America writer, and I want to say his name correctly, Tracy Rigglesby, I believe he used to be a former GM with the Rangers, and I say that because I saw that he had an ESPN blog way back in the day, and I think it was like behind the GM's desk or whatever, kind of a, I guess, whatever. So anyway, well, actually, I am wrong. I thought I was right. Curse you, ESPN. Anyway. Yes, but
talking
anyways.
about the expansion.
Yes. He wrote an article about how his version of the expansion would be where instead of having currently there are 6 divisions, 3 in each league, he's consolidating it into one massive league, taking out the American League and the National League, and dividing up the 32 teams into 4 8-team divisions, where it consists of the East, the North, the Midwest, and the West. And also, he talks about, having a 156-game schedule, and kind of, talks a little bit about the playoffs a little bit, but not as much as a lot of people wanted to know, because I've seen, read the comments, trying to be a troll out there. And he talks about it a little bit where there's possibly 12 out of the 32 franchises could be in the postseason. And
yeah, the only problem with that, though, is I don't want teams below 500 playing in the playoffs.
That is the one thing that I hate. And I know a lot of people that we've talked to about this, through Twitter and Facebook, said that they don't want it to be, I guess, quote unquote, like the NBA, where one conference, the Western Conference, we'll just say it, has like the dominant teams, have, every team has a winning record. But if you look at the Eastern Conference, 5 or 6 of the teams are above 500, and the last 2 to 3 are below 500. And I mean, that's 16 teams. And if you cut those, that to 12, I mean, you'll have teams over 500. But in the game of baseball, it's very different. I mean, if you look back at it after, just for the National League, right after, Colorado and Arizona, it was Milwaukee, then St. Louis, and then no one else that I can think of on top of my head that was in the wild card contention that was above 500. And it was almost the same thing with the American League side. If you looked at it, you had the Yankees and the Twins making that wild card, making the wild card spot, but right after them, they had Kansas City, didn't make it 500. LA didn't make it 500. And Tampa, that didn't make it 500. And they had a record of 80 and 82. And to go back real quick for the National League, yeah, right after St. Louis, that had an 83 and 79 record, the Miami Marlins had a 77 and 85 record. So expanding it to 12 teams is a ludicrous idea. There shouldn't be anything like that. And I mean, again, I get it that they want to, we're going to boost team revenue by having 12 teams in it, but it also leads to a lack of consistency with with teams in that. Yeah, and competitiveness. Thank you. And that's what it leads, a lack of competitiveness, which is kind of like the NBA, which the competitive teams, there's 5 or 6 competitive teams that's in the mind, when I think about the NBA, but in all reality, who are the other competitive teams? And I mean, it has become such a, for the NBA, it's become such a quote-unquote weak team sport that we've seen the past 3 years the same teams in the championship game, in the NBA Finals, the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers, which, I mean, it's whatever. They got great teams, but the other teams are just kind of like, they're good, but they're not, they're not super power teams like the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I'm not saying that, I would love to see something different. It's not like last year was Cleveland Indians versus the Chicago Cubs. This year, most likely, it will be the Dodgers versus either the Yankees or the Astros. The year before, in 2015, Royals-Mets. So we're going to have 6 different teams in 3 years in the World Series, in the championship game, while the past 3 years for the NBA has been, the same. It has been consistent, and it kind of gets dull for anybody that's trying to get into the NBA, because then you're going to have those bandwagon fans that are going to, they're going to be like, yeah, I've been a Cleveland fan since, 2006 when LeBron came, when it was actually 2003, so on and so forth, with Golden State and everything else. But it just shows. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's just what you're going to get if you have a 12-team playoff in baseball, is that you're going to have the top 4 teams year in and year out spending more money than everybody else.
Mm-hmm. And
we already almost have that if the Dodgers and the Yankees end up in the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure the Dodgers have the highest team payroll.
Yes, and I believe the Yankees have either the second or third, but
top 5 teams.
Yeah, top 5 teams.
Top 5 teams in terms of payroll.
Yes, but that's kind of, for that. I'm not an NBA guy, and if you listeners are out there that is more in tune with the NBA, and if I'm wrong,
educate us.
Yeah, educate us. I know that the NBA does have other teams that are good, but I'm kind of tired of seeing Golden State versus Cleveland in the final when I should be getting,
Golden State versus LeBron. It's Golden State versus LeBron.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be cordial about it, Phil. You know me. Anyway, I'm just tired of seeing that, and I don't want to see something similar with that
this expansion.
With this expansion and with such a great league. Pretty much it's besides it's the national pastime, it's America's league. It was founded in 1903. These other leagues were formed right in the 60s. The NBA was probably in the 50s, if I remember correctly. NHL was in the 20s or 30s, maybe earlier, a little bit earlier than that. But the NFL, right in the 1960s, and everybody's like, yeah, this is America's game. No, it's baseball. And I don't want to see a lack of competition. I don't want to see a lack of players.
You don't want to see that. You don't want to see that.
Because everybody...
And the MLB expands to 32 teams. What is your proposed playoff bracket?
Okay, so this is
If they
go ahead.
We'll use the Baseball Americas article
Mm-hmm.
for division wise,
Mm-hmm.
North, East, West, and Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
What would your 8 teams each? What would your playoff format look like? Obviously, it would be the winners from each division.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 4 teams right there
Mm-hmm.
on opposite sides of the bracket.
Mm-hmm.
So do you do 2 one-game playoffs between 4 other teams, make it an 8-team playoff?
So this is what I kind of envision it as. So we kind of have, and this goes to another league that I brought up, to the NFL. And the NFL has 12 teams that make it to the playoffs, and all 12 of them have winning records. How I see it is that the top 4, the division winners, will be seeded 1, 2, 3, and 4 as what their record is. So if we're gonna make it like how baseball did this year, we'll have Dodgers as number 1. They won 104 games. Your second seeded team would be the Cleveland Indians, would be second seed, and they would be on the other side of the bracket. So then your third seeded team, which possibly could face Cleveland if they beat the wild card, which I'll get to in a moment, will be your third seeded team. And then your fourth seeded team will be the Washington Nationals because they won 97 games. So you have one versus 4, 2 versus 3, like a normal bracket. But then it will probably go into what the NFL does. And the NFL has the wild card games, which it's 4 teams from each conference playing against each other with the best records. So if that was going to happen, it would be so it would be a huge wild card. So it would be an 8-team wild card. You would have the number 1, quote unquote, which would be number 5 if you're going to, through the list, would be, we'll just say to save grace, it will be the Boston Red Sox will be your number 1 wild card. And then so on and so forth. Then you would have whatever team is left. So the first wild card will face number 8, 2 will face 7, 4 will face 5, and 3 will face 6. Whoever wins those games, and this is how I see it, again, this is what Tracy Rigglesby doesn't go through, is how the system will work. I see it more as a 5-game set, maybe a 7-game set, but possibly a 5-game set. And whoever wins that will go on to face the division winners. Well, how that is determined will be the lowest team, the lowest winning team. So let's just say the 8th seed. Let's just say the 8th seeded wild card team upsets the 1 seeded. So it would be 1 versus the 8th seed of the wild card. The 1 division versus the 8th seed wild card. And then it will be like the 2nd seed will play, let's just say, probably the 4th seeded wild card team, and so on and so forth, depending who wins. So first seed gets the lowest, the first divisional seed gets the lowest seeded wild card team, and then the 4th seeded divisional team will get the highest seeded wild card team. Does that make sense? I know I said a lot right there.
Yeah.
But that's how the NFL does it, and I think that would be kind of the best to do it in a sense. But also I could see where it could be inconsistent, and it should be really the highest seeded team should face the highest seeded wild card team should face the highest seeded divisional team, and yada yada yada. But besides that, I kind of made a counterpoint with Google Maps, and I wrote an article on the MLBeers website about the expansion, and I did talk about how he brings up a 12-team playoff system, 4 8-team divisions, 8-team divisions, and so on and so forth. But I made my own version, and I decided a couple things. I decided to keep Portland and Montreal as the 2 expansion sites just to save grace. And then I tried to stay as close as possible to rivalries as I can. So, what I have for my expansion is a 4 divisions in each league instead of 3. And each of those divisions will have 4 teams. And I'll just go down the American League first. So, my division setup is East, Central, South, and West. And the South, it might be a little tricky, but stay with me, folks, here. So, in the East, we have the Yankees, Blue Jays, Red Sox, and the Cleveland Indians. And I'll talk about them in a moment. Then in the Central, I have the Royals, White Sox, Minnesota Twins, and the Colorado Rockies. Again, I'll explain everything when I'm finished with this. For the South, we have the Texas Rangers, Houston Astros, Tampa Bay Rays, and the Miami Marlins. And then in the West, it will be the Seattle Mariners, the Oakland Athletics, the Anaheim Angels, and the Portland baseball team. Possibly the Mavericks if they want to, go old school. For the national... Yeah. What's up?
I said, no, that would be cool if they went with the Mavericks.
Mm-hmm. So for the National League side, I have the New York Mets, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Montreal Expos. Then in the Central, St. Louis, Chicago Cubs, Detroit Tigers, and the Milwaukee Brewers. In the South region, or South Division, I have the Braves, Nationals, Orioles, and Reds. And then in the West Division, the Dodgers, Padres, Diamondbacks, and Giants. And, of course, hearing that, I know you're going to be like, all right, the West was pretty much settled and done. That was the easiest part. But, going from West to East was more difficult. And it was the only reason why it was difficult is because you have to go, look back at the history books at the MLB and see how everything was structured. And so I wrote down some reasons why. So you heard me say about Miami being a South team and being in the American League. And I said in the article, my decision was for them to be in the American League was because they were close to Tampa. And then, which would make them the automatic rivals. The second thing was that 2 Texas teams and 2 Florida teams just work as a Southern division. And also, the Miami Marlins have been around since 1993, so it was kind of easier to do a transition from National League to American League. For the Colorado Rockies, of course, they went to the American League, but it was hard for me to consider them as a quote-unquote West team when they were closer to Kansas City than to any other West team in, any West team. So, and also it would have been odd to call them a South team because they're all the way in the Rockies near the middle of the nation. For the third, I have Detroit being the only founding team, the founding member of the MLB to switch the leagues. And the reason being is that they had to be in the National League because they were closer to the National League Central than Cleveland. And also it had been kind of hard to say they were part of the East when Cleveland was closer, Toronto and Montreal and everybody else was closer. Baltimore, they're the South. They're part of the South in the National League because, I said that the Washington Nationals are their true rivals because they're so close. The Beltway series has always been a good series. The second part would have been Cleveland would have been a hard sell to be a South team because of the location. And then C, or the third, would have been drawing a line from Montreal to Baltimore. There are 9 teams in that northeast quadrant that are north of Baltimore, which was Montreal, Toronto, Detroit, Boston, Cleveland, the 2 New York teams, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. And then Cincinnati, I didn't bring up Cincinnati much, but when you look at the map, it's a little bit questionable if they should be a Central team or an East team, but they were right in that, I guess, hellish spot to where they should be, either or. But anyway, the reason why I went with Cincinnati to be the Southern team is because if you look back, historically, since the inception of the MLB to the I think it would be 50s. Yeah, it would be the 1950s. Cincinnati was quote unquote the Southern team, right behind St. Louis. If you look at the old maps, because St. Louis was like really down deep in the corner. But again, I didn't see Cincinnati having a clear-cut rivalry unless it was with Cleveland, and it would have not made sense if I had Cleveland in either in the East, and it just, and there was no Southern team. So that's the reason why I chose Cincinnati as my Southern team. Now, getting to the scheduling, I still have the 162 game season. 57 of those games will be against divisional opponents, which will be 19 games each against 3 teams. Then 84 games against the intra-league. So they'll be playing, it'll be NL versus NL. So it'd be 12 teams. They get 7 games each. And then they will play 21 interleague games against 7 teams, 3 games each. And for my playoffs, there'll be 8 teams, but they're all going to be divisional winners. There's no need of a wild card. Seeding will be, normal. Whoever has the highest win record will be the number 1, just how like it is in the MLB. And I say that every series is a 7-game series. The postseason must start on October 1st, and there are no stagger starts, which means the NL series starts on October 1st, and then the AL games start on October 2nd. Every game is on the same day. But that's just my take. Do you have any questions for me? This is where I want you to I want you to think about this, and I want to see if I can answer your question, because this took me, at least I guess 2 hours to write and, pinpoint the markers on the Google Maps and to make it perfect. And of course, if you go on to the MLBeers, MLBeers.com and go to that article, we have a interactive map, so you can, look at the current and the proposed expansion teams, and then look at each league, the expansion league, if you want. So, shoot, I want to hear this.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with how you have the league, division set up.
Okay.
But your playoff system, let me find it, because you said so much and it was hard to keep up with.
Yeah, I know. I should have kind of let you talk right in between all my points right there. But you talk about the playoffs. Do you want me to go over it real quick for you again?
Well, no, I got it, because it's the winners from each divisional wild card.
Yeah. That's how you get the 8 teams, because the division winners will be, the 8.
Yeah. But I would still like to incorporate a wild card. Just a one game. The one game wild card has just been so exciting. That's why I think I would miss it.
I understand your point. And I kind of took that in consideration. But for me, it doesn't it doesn't work the way that the divisions are set up. Because originally the wild card was set up for the three divisions, and they need a fourth team to play against. Unless you want to go to Japan, take their playoff system and implement it here, which is, the first team, first seeded team gets a bye. Team number 2 and team number 3 play in I think it's a 3-game series or a 5-game series. And then they play a 7-game series. The winner plays a 7-game series, and then with the 1 seed, and then they play the quote-unquote World Series. Well, it's the Japan Cup, Japan Trophy, whatever. But that's kind of the reason why they had the wild card. And the reason why the wild card doesn't fit is because we already have the number of teams to fill, and the wild card would just, even though it's nice and can make it messy, and I know the Cardinals have won titles being the wild card, I just don't see it working in this situation unless they make it like a 12-team, the wild card faces the lower seed.
Like they do now.
But I'm still about it. And that's the reason why I don't have a wild card team or system with that.
Okay. I get it. But I think it would still, I guess overall that's the only really part I disagree with. Is I would like the 13th seed, quote unquote, to play the 12th seed in a 1-game playoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I understand where you're coming from, especially from Tracy Riggleby's article, where it's the top 4 seeded, the top 4 division teams play a bye until the winners of the wild card will play. But for me, it just doesn't make sense to have a wild card with that, and that's kind of the reason why I just dislike it.
Left it out. Yeah. No, I get it.
I mean, there's definitely some work. I mean, the 7-game series, each series is a 7-game series, might have to be worked out where the first series is a 5-game, and then like how it is in the normal MLB to finish in October, because I believe in this month, I believe it would have finished, I want to say the 27th or the 28th. I want to say the 28th, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
But yeah, any other questions?
No, man. I think you summed it up very well. And, if everyone else wants to see it, just hit our website and check out Andrew's article.
Yeah, because it's very interesting. And, of course, if you want to, you can comment on the website with a WordPress account, or you can, message me, reply or message me on either the podcast Twitter or my Twitter account. But enough about expansion. We are finally down to 2 teams in the World Series. The Los Angeles Dodgers and the Houston Astros. I know we've already said who was going to be in the World Series, but we're finally here going to talk about it. And, besides what we've already said earlier with the Dodgers almost, hell, you can call it being near perfect or perfect during their series. Near perfect because they lost 1 game. And then the Houston Astros winning all their games at home and having difficulties, with difficulties playing away. What are some of the key things that you want to see in this World Series? Not necessarily the 3 key factors from the Houston Astros or the Los Angeles Dodgers, but kind of like, what is your key what are your key things that you want to see during this World Series, like it going to Game 7 or, something spectacular, I guess?
If it were to go to Game 7, I would want to see Kershaw and Verlander each have a no-hitter going into the ninth inning.
That's a ballsy statement. Not gonna
Could you
lie.
imagine? Could you imagine? If you're an actual fan from each one of those teams, like what do you do?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah, it does seem like something real crazy, but I mean,
Oh yeah, no, that's just absurd and off the wall, and most likely won't ever happen.
hey, you never know. It's the game of
No,
baseball,
but genuinely, I just want to see a good series played. I want to see the Astros offense come to life like they did during the season.
Mm-hmm.
I want their bullpen to be a little better. I don't want to see a bunch of blowouts. I don't want to see another Yankees Astros series where each team's winning at home and that's that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I want some back and forth. I want my emotions to kind of be pulled each way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was.
I want to go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I kind of want to go into each game not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's. I mean, again.
I guess typically you do every game you watch, you go into it not expecting certain things or not knowing what's going to happen. But what happened during that Astros and Yankees series is you kind of got, I guess, conditioned into thinking the home team's going to win because neither one's offense is good enough right now.
Perfect word to use, that conditioned for what happened. For me, before we get into the key factors, for me, for this series to be, outstanding, of course, get it to Game 7. But, I kind of want to see every game close. I don't want it to be...
Yeah.
Of course everybody wants to see it close, but I don't think I want to see, bombardment of home runs from each team because they are great offensive teams.
But they also have great pitching.
Yeah.
I want to have that game where you're kind of on the edge of your seat each pitch.
Results like 2-1, 3-2, 1-0. I think those would be the best out of it.
You and I like that style of baseball.
Well, I think it's because, sometimes we're not the common baseball, baseball fan. No offense to people that are.
But most people like seeing a high-scoring baseball game.
Everybody wants to see offense.
Because that's exciting, but what's exciting to me is watching a great pitcher go against great hitters who adjust mid-game.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's so hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I kind of brought it up earlier with the, talking about Justin Verlander and Houston, is that, the greatest moments, during 60s baseball for the Cardinals was Bob Gibson and his impeccable pitching, where
look what that led the MLB to do in 1969.
Yeah, raise the mound just a little bit.
And look what happened in the 70s and 80s. Offense became more important.
Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why, that's why I have to make that that assumption, I guess, or that, that idea is that, we kind of get caught in the moment where offense is king, where it's great. But if you get that flow going with your pitching, everything else can be perfect. And that's where I'm
like
those
Verlander games in Game 2 and Game 6 of the ALCS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where it kind of...
The dude had a perfect rhythm and was just shut down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if a pitcher's having that kind of performance and the offense is able to score, that's a great game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely.
But that's really what I want to see from this series.
And
I want to see Astros rebound and I want to see the Dodgers keep their pedal to the metal.
I want to see a team win an away game.
Yes, I do. Me too.
But anyway, yeah, go ahead. Any final words with that?
It's just for me that's the key. It's just if you want to make baseball even more watchable,
mm-hmm.
is you don't want to have one team struggling.
Mm-hmm.
You want both teams playing their best baseball right now, and the Dodgers already are.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the Astros can turn around and rebound, and I did pick, I think, the Indians to win the World Series.
You did.
But if I stick with my AL prediction, if the Astros can turn it around and win the World Series, this will be a great playoff.
Yeah, I cannot disagree with you there. I'm not a huge Dodger fan, but I do like the franchise. And I mean, if the Dodgers win, I'm okay with it. If Houston wins, I'm okay with it because it's not the Yankees.
Either way.
Yeah, it's a win-win either way.
It's not the goddamn Yankees.
Yes, exactly. And for me, it's not the goddamn Cubs. But anyway, let's get down to this. So, Game 1, it's Keuchel versus Kershaw. Game 2, Verlander versus Hill. And then Game 3, Yu Darvish will take the mound while it's still to be announced later on, to be determined for the Houston Astros. And I guess this is my first question. If you're going to look at each of these, these two known pitching matchups, I know the Keuchel-Kershaw one and the Verlander-Hill one is going to be magnificent. Don't get me wrong. What are you going to see out of these? I mean, what do you imagine of seeing these two games going on at Dodger Stadium?
I believe the Dodgers lose Game 1 and rebound and win Game 2.
Interesting.
And Verlander only goes about 5 1/3.
Okay. And I like that. And, kind of to lead it up, what are kind of the key factors, not specifically in those games, but in the series? What are the key factors for Dallas Keuchel to win Game 1, or offense or anything? What are the key factors, for the Houston Astros? I mean, I know that we talked about a lot about it earlier when, in the league championship series, but what is kind of the key factors, that we should see that they should make the adjustments for it, for against the Dodgers?
The Astros have to be more aggressive on the base pass when they're playing at Dodger Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Because you lose your DH. So they're going to have to produce runs elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
They can't rely on the home run. They need Josh Reddick to hit. They need Bregman, Altuve, Springer, and Correa to steal bases.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be a shark on the base pass.
Mm-hmm.
They need to put pressure on Kershaw and the Dodgers bullpen. They need guys innings 1 through 5 against Kershaw. They need guys on second and third base almost every inning.
Mm-hmm.
They need to make it stressful. And, on the flip side, the Dodgers need to be able to control that. Because they're using Austin Barnes and Yasmani Grandal as their catchers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have their throw-out rate in front of me right now. But, like I said, the Astros got to do something. They have to add pressure.
Mm-hmm. And, I can't disagree with you there. Because if you look at both teams, and I'll say my Dodgers factors later, if you look at both teams during the league championship series, they only stole once. Actually stole once. And that was with Cody Bellinger stealing. But, for comparing the Dodgers to the Houston Astros for speed, definitely it's the Houston Astros that have more speed than, the Dodgers.
And that's where I was getting at with the base running is they have the players capable of it.
Mm-hmm.
So turning around and looking at you, who do you kind of project being like a sleeper X factor?
For the Houston Astros, that is, that's kind of a good question. And that, I can't say really, I guess, much with, Correa or Altuve. But if we had to, if we had to really talk about it, I think kind of you have to look at as a sleeper, and this is kind of a bold, I have two, but kind of a bold picks is that I think Marwin Gonzalez, if he's going to be starting at left field, which it seemed like he did the whole series, then I think he's going to come up and start showing a flash of greatness, what he did during the regular season. And then I think it has to go back to, the Kansas City roots with Carlos Beltran. I think when it goes back to Houston, I think he will have the opportunity to, go out there and, and actually, it's be his second time in the World Series. And I definitely feel that he really wants this one, and he's going to have a veteran presence. And and anybody that faces him is going his playoff numbers aren't that great, but definitely if he tries to, come out there with that veteran presence, he's patient at the plate, he can do some damage. And if everything goes right, it could be, something else.
He could draw a big walk, pinch hitting for a pitcher in LA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's where
not even getting a hit, but just like I said, putting pressure on the Dodgers pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
They've been all year have been locked down, and they've faced pressure-filled situations.
Mm-hmm.
But they also did lose 11 in a row. This team is beatable.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to be able to put the pressure on them.
Yes, and that's kind of the one other thing that I was going to say, for the Dodgers. But before I get to that, any other key factors for the Houston Astros?
No, not really.
Okay, so for the Dodgers, not only the key factor for me, looking at the Dodgers, not only that they have to, not be pressured by these, fast base runners from the Houston Astros. I think it's going to be the lights of game one, the crowd of game one, the logos of game one, just getting the jitters, being nervous because it's game one. It's the first time since 1988 the Dodgers have been in the World Series. And actually, the funny thing is, I believe 9 of the current 25 on the roster were born after the last World Series win for the Dodgers. And some of these guys, it's their first time. Yeah, they get to the playoffs. They made it to the championship, the league championship series, and they lose one year and win the other. Specifically, Corey Seager, but Cody Bellinger, it will be his first time. Austin Barnes, Corey Kluberson, Chris Taylor, especially him, because he has, he was on other teams that weren't playoff, contenders, and then he actually finally, is on a team that is in the World Series. And I think that's where it's going to be kind of the, that's where it's going to be the difference maker. The jitters. It's the LA lights. You're going to get more than, your average fan out there, because those tickets are, the average ticket cost is over $3,000. And I know that the whole stadium is going to be blue, but it's going to be where they're going to get, there's going to be moments where they're going to be nervous. There's going to be moments where, even though they're seasoned veterans in the regular season, there isn't a guy ready for the World Series. And I know they got the postseason presence. Veterancy up the A with postseason, experience, but there's nothing like that when it comes to the World Series. I mean, if you really want to look at it, going back to Carlos Beltran, 2005, that was his first time. But if you look at everybody else in this lineup here, nobody has been to the World Series for the Astros. I mean, if you look at the Dodgers, if you go up and down the closest guy will be Curtis Granderson, and he did poorly against the Cubs, and his veteran presence might be the same. It's not the same as Carlos Beltran. Carlos Beltran has a phenomenal presence, Hall of Famer, of course. But when it comes down to it, I think it's going to be the veteran experience when it comes to the World Series. And I know, again, these two clubs are very young, but a few have been to the World Series. And I've totally forgot that Chase Utley is on the team, but he's another guy that's went and won the World Series. So it's going to be how the veterans are going to calm down this team and actually try to win a World Series when the blood is going to be boiling and the jitters are going to be at an all-time high.
Oh, yeah. And especially with what the Astros have done lately in 15 and 16 in making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like this is their time, and the Dodgers haven't been there in, what, you said 29 years?
29 years.
29 years. So each team has that feeling like this is it. And it has the making of a really good series, but it also has a very good chance of the Dodgers just running over the Astros.
Mm-hmm. And, I guess my question to you, since you asked it to me, is who is going to be the sleeper of this series? And I know that is a very, very tough question when most of the guys that have been in the five games have been obliterating the Cubs the Cubs pitching, not necessarily the defense, but definitely the Cubs pitching. What is going to be, I guess, the sleeper of this team? Doesn't have to be a batter. It could be a pitcher too. Who is your sleeper for the Los Angeles Dodgers?
I would have to say, I'm going out on a real big limb here. I'm going to say Austin Barnes.
Okay.
And, he is hitting well. He's hitting a .261 with one home run. But for some reason, I feel like offensively and defensively, he has a series of a lifetime.
And, it's a possibility. You never know. Again, Carlos Beltran might be his moment where he redeems himself. That's why I think he's a sleeper.
He's going to have plenty of opportunities to do it playing in LA.
Mm-hmm. You
could bet at him at getting at one at-bat every game while playing in LA.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And, of course, I got to ask, anything else that you want to add before we end the show?
No.
All righty. And all I can say is good luck to these teams. It's been a wondrous ride this year to see both these teams really, outstandingly win their divisions and just almost rocket through the postseason. But of course, the best team, I wish them all good luck, and may the best team win. That's what I'm trying to say. So anyway, that will do it here for us, folks, for the MLBeers podcast. And so, if you're listening to this on our website, we are also on iTunes, SoundCloud, and TuneIn. And if you did or didn't hear before the podcast started, we are part of the Tangent Bound Network. I know that they have a multitude of genres from, I think I'm starting to get into some of the shows, but Phil, I know that one of your shows is on there, the Salty Language Podcast, and I know that you've really enjoyed them.
Yep. And the Tangent Bound offers a range of podcasts where anything that you like, you'll be able to find.
Yeah, and I think they do have I believe a wrestling podcast too. I believe.
Yes.
So, if you're big into wrestling, there you go. That's the podcast that you should listen to. Great guys there. Also, if you want to contact us, we have an email at majorleaguebeers@gmail.com, our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Untapped app, all under the key moniker of the MLBeers podcast. And I know that 3 of those 4 apps you already know, but just in case if you don't know, the Untapped app is for the beer enthusiast /social media. So you get to see what beers, other people have, your friends, and what's kind of the hot beer at the moment. Not necessarily the literal hot beer, that'd be a horrible thing to have, but just the trendy beer that's going on, of course. And of course, we're always going to be posting what we're drinking during the show. And I have to say that, that pumpkin imperial stout was pretty darn good. But anyways, if you also want us to contact us individually, my Twitter account is at RealAWS13. And Phil, what is yours?
At Philco816.
Alrighty, folks. It's down to the nitty-gritty. Only 7 games left in this season of Major League Baseball. So anyways, that will do it here, folks, for the MLBeers podcast. Our motto, our creed, our saying, win or lose, there is always booze.